The night pressed against the glass doors of St. Mary's Medical Center, the kind of night that seemed to swallow sound. Inside, the waiting room was a box of stale air, antiseptic sting, and the faint rattle of a vending machine that had been broken for months. The fluorescent lights buzzed with a nervous rhythm, throwing shadows that flattened every face into masks. A woman stumbled through the entrance, clutching her chest with one hand, dragging the other along the wall as if the plaster itself might steady her. Her name was Liana Cross, though no one bothered to ask. Her dress clung to her, soaked in sweat. The color drained from her lips. She fought for each breath, a sound that scratched like torn paper. The room stiffened, but no one rose. Behind the reception desk sat Dr. Helen Mercer, the attending physician for the night shift. Her hair was tied in a severe knot, her white coat pressed as though it had never seen chaos. She didn't look up when the woman staggered closer. Instead, she pinched the plastic card that had slid across the counter and, with deliberate precision, dropped it into the waste bin. "This is a hospital," Mercer said, her voice sharp, rehearsed. "Not a shelter for theatrics." From the corner of the room, a man stood. His name was Daniel Cross, husband to the collapsing woman. His boots squeaked on the polished floor as he caught her before her knees gave way. His hands were steady, though his eyes carried the storm. "She can't breathe," he said, voice controlled but trembling at its edges. Mercer finally looked up, her eyes sweeping across them with the chill of appraisal. "They never can. Panic attacks always feel like the end of the world." The room turned its attention without speaking. A teenager in the corner lifted her phone, the red glow of a live feed spilling across her face. Words began to crawl across her screen. Comments, accusations, disbelief, none of which the doctor noticed. Liana tried to form words, but her lungs gave her fragments. "Please, can't." Her husband eased her into a chair, his movements slow, deliberate. His silence filled the space heavier than shouting. He met Mercer's gaze but did not plead. His calmness felt dangerous, the kind that waits, observes, and builds. The nurse behind the counter, Maria Delgado, shifted uneasily. Her eyes flicked toward the unused monitor just 10 feet away. "Doctor, maybe an EKG?" "Return to your duties," Mercer cut in, her words like steel striking stone. "I've already made my assessment." The nurse's lips tightened. She stepped back, but her gaze lingered on the woman in the chair. Liana's breathing grew shallower, her skin glossed with sweat that glittered under the sterile light. A faint blue edged her mouth. Daniel brushed his thumb across her hand. Damp. Cooling. He bent slightly, so close only she could hear. "I'm here." When he straightened, he lifted his phone. He wasn't calling. He wasn't pleading. He was documenting. His camera swept across the unused machines, the quiet nurses, the man with a bandaged hand already receiving stitches, the young woman getting her ankle wrapped. It captured Mercer, whose expression hadn't changed, and Delgado, whose eyes betrayed the conflict she could not voice. The viewer count on the teenager's stream doubled, then tripled. Comments exploded across the feed. "Why won't they help? This is neglect. She's dying in front of them." The guard arrived next. Tall, square-shouldered, hand resting on his radio. His nameplate read Owen Barnes. He cleared his throat as though reciting lines. "Sir, you're causing a disturbance." Daniel didn't flinch. "She's dying. We're not leaving." Mercer stood, arms crossed, impatience etched into every line of her face. 10 minutes, she said. "Produce insurance and a deposit, or leave." No one spoke. The clock ticked in red numbers above the desk. 12:08. Liana's eyes fluttered. Her head slumped against the chair. Delgado's hands twisted together, the whites of her knuckles showing. Her gaze darted again to the monitor, then to the door that led to the cardiac lab. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her fear was visible, but so was her conscience. Daniel's shoulders squared. Something in his posture changed, subtle but unmistakable. The waiting room felt it, the weight of someone who could no longer be dismissed. "Your protocols," he said quietly, each word heavy as a stone dropping into water, "are not applied equally." The administrator had entered silently, clipboard in hand, her heels tapping across the floor. Veronica Hale, dressed in a navy suit that gleamed under the lights, joined Mercer with a smile that was more weapon than courtesy. "We follow procedure here, sir. Nothing more, nothing less." Daniel's voice remained even. "Procedure has become excuse." For the first time, Hale hesitated. The faint smile faltered at the edges. The phone in Daniel's hand shifted, screen glowing against his skin. He scrolled past his contacts, names no one in the room could see. He stopped, his thumb hovering. Liana's head lolled against his shoulder. Her lips were now a startling shade of blue, each breath a ragged, desperate sound. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. She managed a whisper only he heard. "Is it time?" His eyes tightened. "Yes," he murmured. The room seemed to lean forward as he pressed the call. The line rang once. Then, through the small device, a voice cut clear, formal, and immediate. "Mr. Cross, how may I assist you?" The waiting room froze. Hale's clipboard shifted in her grip. Mercer blinked, confusion slicing through arrogance. Daniel straightened, removing his cap. His quiet presence transformed into authority that filled every corner. His voice carried, measured, deliberate. "This is Daniel," he said. "I need the board on the line. Now." The humming lights buzzed louder. The clock ticked. The silence pressed against every chest in the room. The play had changed. The voice on the phone was precise, clipped, the kind of voice used to giving orders that moved entire buildings. Daniel held the device to his chest so everyone could hear. The sterile air of the waiting room thickened, as though the walls themselves were listening. "Put me on speaker," the voice demanded. Daniel obeyed. The sound filled the room, sharp and undeniable. "What's the situation, Mr. Cross?" Mercer's face drained of color. Hale's pen stilled against her clipboard. Even Barnes, the guard, shifted back a half step. The authority carried through that small machine made every hierarchy in the room tremble. Daniel's voice was low but clear. "My wife, Liana, has been showing textbook signs of cardiac infarction for over 20 minutes. No tests, no intervention, nothing but contempt. She is fading in front of you." For the first time that night, Dr. Helen Mercer's hands shook. She glanced at Hale, waiting for the administrator's rescue. But Hale's expression had soured into a mask of calculation. The voice on the line hardened. "Is this true?" Silence. Maria Delgado stepped forward. The nurse's voice quivered, but her words were steady. "Yes. Her symptoms are clear. Blue lips, radiating pain, shortness of breath. No evaluation has been performed." The waiting room erupted with murmurs. The teenager's live stream swelled past 10,000 viewers. Comments crawled across her phone like fire ants. "This is malpractice. Someone help her. She's dying in real time." Mercer's mouth opened and closed, her defenses collapsing under the weight of the room. Panic attacks can look—" "Enough," the voice thundered through the phone. "Dr. Mercer, Administrator Hale, you are both being observed. Immediate intervention is required, or consequences will follow." Hale's lips pressed into a thin line. She leaned toward Mercer, whispering harshly, "Do something. Now." But Mercer's training warred with her pride. Her hands hovered, then dropped. She had lost control of the narrative. Daniel's gaze never wavered. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't moving. But his stillness commanded more authority than any raised voice. Liana sagged heavier in his arms, her skin taking on a gray sheen. Each breath rattled louder. Delgado darted to the supply cart, snatching wires and adhesive pads. She moved with trembling urgency, attaching leads to Liana's chest. The monitor screamed its verdict in jagged peaks, classic ST elevation. The silence that followed was suffocating. Everyone in the room knew what it meant, even those without training. Heart under siege, life slipping second by second. Daniel's eyes cut to Mercer. You doubted. You dismissed. Now the evidence sings in neon lines. Mercer backed into the counter as though cornered. I didn't realize. Delgado's voice broke through, firm now, certain. She needs the cath lab. Immediately. The security guard Barnes swallowed hard. His hand slipped from his radio. The sense of threat he had tried to project evaporated, replaced by something close to shame. The teenager's phone screen glowed brighter. Viewers surpassed 15,000. Words scrolled. Get her to surgery now. Fire that doctor. Call the press. Veronica Hale's phone vibrated violently in her pocket. She pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and paled. The name flashing there carried more weight than her entire career. She didn't answer. Couldn't. The voice on Daniel's speaker returned, calmer now, deadly in its precision. Mr. Cross, we are en route. But you must understand, every moment you wait endangers her heart. Will they comply, or must we intervene at the highest level? Daniel turned slowly, letting his eyes settle on Hale, then Mercer, then Barnes. No words needed. The balance of power had shifted. Delgado pressed oxygen to Liana's face. Her chest rose with effort. Her eyes fluttered half open, dazed. She searched for Daniel, her gaze watery but intent. His hand found hers. He bent closer. Hold on, he whispered. Just a little longer. The pivot came then, not in thunder, but in the fragile weight of that look. The whole room saw it, the invisible thread between a woman slipping toward death and the man who refused to let her vanish. Mercer snapped at last, her voice cracking. Get the team. Call cardiology. Now. The words were meant to command, but they carried none of the authority they once had. They sounded like surrender. Delgado was already moving, summoning the crash team with quick, urgent gestures. The double doors at the far end banged open. Gurney wheels squealed. The cardiac team swept in like a tide of white coats and clipped instructions. The waiting room watched, silenced, as strangers took hold of Liana, lifting her onto the rolling bed. Machines beeped. Gloves snapped. Oxygen hissed. For the first time, true urgency filled the space. But it was too late to erase what had been witnessed. Daniel followed as far as the hallway allowed, his face unreadable, his hand still hovering over the phone like a weapon not yet sheathed. He watched until the doors swung closed, cutting her from view. Behind him, Hale barked into her phone, her voice strained with panic. Mercer leaned against the counter, pale, her hands trembling so violently she could no longer grip her pen. Barnes retreated to the corner, as if distance could shield him from accountability. The teenager ended her stream only when a nurse demanded she put her phone away. By then, 20,000 strangers had already seen enough. The story was no longer confined to four walls. It had escaped, alive and multiplying. Daniel stood alone now in the waiting room, the phone still glowing in his palm. His stillness returned, heavier than before. He had spoken little, but his silence carried the gravity of a storm not yet broken. Through the doors he could faintly hear the flurry of orders, the beeping crescendo of machines, the desperate dance of medicine finally at work. The clock read 12:30, nearly 30 minutes since Liana had begged for help, minutes stolen by arrogance, ignorance, and prejudice, minutes that would not return. The voice came again through the phone, softer this time. Mr. Cross, whatever happens now, know this. We are watching. Every second, every decision. They cannot hide from what has begun. Daniel lifted his eyes toward the ceiling, his jaw set. His reply was quiet, almost reverent. They already lost their chance to hide. The double doors swung again as a nurse rushed past, eyes wide, lips pressed in urgency. She did not meet his gaze. She vanished into the corridor where Liana fought for her life. Daniel remained rooted, his presence filling the room with something neither Hale nor Mercer could name. Not threat, not rage. Something older, steadier, more inevitable. The storm was only beginning. The hallway outside the emergency doors was hushed, though it pulsed with an invisible current. Daniel stood alone beneath the sterile glow, his hand still curled around the phone. The light reflected off its black screen, casting a faint sheen across his wedding ring. The ring caught every glint of fluorescent light, a steady flash in an otherwise indifferent corridor. Behind the sealed doors, muffled voices rose and fell. Commands, machines, a crescendo of urgency. Each sound pressed into Daniel's chest like a nail. He remained still, yet inside his composure flickered. He thought of Liana's last whisper before they wheeled her away. Her lips had formed words barely audible. "Is it time?" He had said yes. Now he wondered if she had meant something deeper, something final. Down the corridor, Hale appeared. Her heels snapped against the tiles, her suit jacket immaculate, though her face was no longer smooth. Her eyes darted to him, then away, as if avoiding a mirror she feared. Behind her trailed Mercer. Her coat wrinkled at the sleeves, her once sharp voice collapsed into silence. Barnes lingered several paces back, his bulk diminished, radio clutched like an anchor. Daniel didn't move when they approached. He simply shifted the phone back to speaker mode, the device humming with a faint line of static. The unseen presence on the other end remained, the reminder that what happened here was no longer confined. "Mr. Cross," Hale began, her tone measured, her smile forced. "We are doing everything possible now. The cardiology team is the best in the state. Liana is in capable hands." Daniel's eyes cut through her words. "Capable hands were waiting 20 minutes ago. You chose to withhold them." Mercer flinched, her gaze dropping to the floor. Hale's lips tightened, but she pressed on. "There were protocols, procedures. We could not—" "Protocols don't suffocate," Daniel said quietly. "People do." The silence that followed was thick. Delgado appeared from the double doors, her scrubs stained at the knees, her face drawn with urgency. She approached cautiously, addressing Daniel rather than Hale or Mercer. "They're working on stabilizing her. The artery is blocked, severely. She's in the lab now. They're attempting to open it." Daniel studied her face. The tremor in her voice was not weakness, but truth. He nodded once. Delgado hesitated, then leaned closer, lowering her voice. "She should have been treated immediately. The delay—" She cut herself off, as if aware of who else stood listening. But her eyes carried the message. Damage had been done. Daniel's jaw tightened, though his tone remained steady. "I know." Mercer shifted, her hands twisting at her sides. "I didn't realize how serious—" "Stop," Daniel said. One word, flat and final. Mercer's mouth snapped shut. The static on his phone shifted into a voice again. It was calmer now, weighted with decision. "Mr. Cross, we are compiling a record of this incident. Every minute has been documented. The board is watching in real time." Hale stiffened. "Board?" Daniel met her gaze at last. For a moment, silence was the only answer. Then he spoke, his words measured. "Did you think negligence dies quietly in fluorescent light? It doesn't. It spills. It spreads." Barnes cleared his throat, his voice hoarse. "Sir, I was just following orders." Daniel turned his head slowly. "You stood ready to remove a woman fighting for breath. Orders don't absolve. They expose. Barnes's shoulders sagged. His radio slipped to his side. He looked less like a guard and more like a man stripped bare. From the doors came another burst of sound. Alarms, urgent commands. Delgado spun and disappeared back inside, leaving the others suspended in silence. The hum of the lights grew louder, as though amplifying their guilt. Mercer's breathing quickened. If something happens, I never meant... Daniel's stare cut into her words, silencing her again. His eyes carried no rage, no shouting, only the cold weight of truth. She asked for help, he said, and you chose to measure her worth instead of her pulse. The sentence landed heavier than any shout. Mercer's hands trembled visibly. Hale shifted her weight, the sharp lines of her suit offering no armor. Through the double doors came Delgado again. Her face was pale but resolute. She approached Daniel, lowering her voice. They've restored some flow, but there's damage. We don't know how much yet. She's stable for now. Stable. The word sat between them like fragile glass, ready to shatter. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, they were colder, steadier. Thank you, he said. Delgado nodded, then returned through the doors. Hale exhaled, her shoulders sagging with relief. You see? She's in good care now. We'll ensure the best recovery possible. Daniel's voice was soft, almost whispering, but it cut through her performance. Recovery doesn't erase delay. The phone in his hand buzzed. The voice returned. Mr. Cross, the board demands a full report within the hour. Every name, every decision, nothing omitted. Mercer paled. Hale turned, whispering frantically into her own device, her tone breaking with panic. Barnes leaned against the wall, head bowed, as though the weight of the moment had finally crushed him. Daniel did not move. His presence filled the hall, silent but immense. He did not look at them again. His eyes stayed fixed on the doors where Liana fought, where minutes could tilt fate. The pivot of the night had passed, but its ripples spread outward. The waiting room had witnessed humiliation. The corridor now carried reckoning. And beyond those sterile doors, a woman's heart clung to its rhythm. A shadow of movement flickered through the glass panel in the door. Delgado reappeared once more, her eyes meeting Daniel's. She didn't speak. She only held his gaze, her expression taut, then slipped back inside. The corridor remained suspended in stillness. Hale's phone buzzed again. Mercer's breath hitched. Barnes's radio crackled. But none of it mattered against the steady hum of the lights and the echo of one man's silence. Daniel's fingers brushed the edge of his phone. He did not end the call. He left the line open, letting the unseen board hear every faltering breath, every desperate excuse. The storm had only just begun, and the doors had not yet opened. The doors to the cardiac lab opened for an instant, spilling a rush of voices and metallic clatter into the hall before sealing shut again. Daniel did not move. His shadow stretched across the polished floor, long and unwavering under the fluorescent glare. The others hovered nearby, restless in their silence, each bound by the weight of what they had allowed. Veronica Hale pressed her phone against her ear, whispering in clipped, frantic tones. Every sentence betrayed her desperation to control a narrative already slipping beyond her reach. Dr. Helen Mercer leaned against the wall, arms wrapped tight across her chest as if trying to hold herself together. Owen Barnes fiddled with his radio, its crackle filling the air with nervous static. None of them dared to meet Daniel's gaze. The voice on his phone was steady, authoritative. Mr. Cross, the board has convened. We are monitoring everything in real time. Do not let them move you. This incident is already a matter of record. Daniel's reply was quiet, almost meditative. Records don't beat hearts. She does. As if summoned by the words, Maria Delgado pushed through the doors. Her mask hung loose around her neck, and her eyes betrayed exhaustion edged with fear. She approached Daniel quickly, her hands trembling from urgency rather than weakness. "She's on bypass," Delgado said. "They've threaded the catheter, but the blockage is worse than expected. They're fighting for her heart." Her words struck the air like stones breaking glass. Hale stepped forward, seizing the moment with a politician's instinct. "You see? She's receiving the highest level of care now. This hospital—" Daniel turned his eyes on her. No raised voice, no sharp gesture, just a stare that hollowed her words before they left her lips. Hale faltered, her mouth closing on silence. Delgado's eyes flicked between them, sensing the charge. "She has a chance," she said quickly. "But the delay, there will be lasting damage." Her gaze locked with Daniel's, offering truth where others gave only excuses. Mercer's voice cracked the silence, brittle and defensive. "She walked in. She was conscious. No ambulance, no collapse. It didn't look urgent." Daniel's reply was sharp as glass. "You looked at her and saw inconvenience, not urgency, not humanity." The hall stilled again. Mercer's lips trembled, but no words came. Hale shifted uneasily, the polished veneer of authority crumbling by degrees. Barnes retreated farther into the corner, his bulk shrinking as shame crept across his face. Through the glass pane in the doors, the shadow of a gurney moved. The beeping of monitors cut through the air in jagged rhythm. Daniel's jaw tightened. Each sound was a reminder that time was still being counted, still slipping. The voice on the phone returned, quieter now but edged with steel. "Mr. Cross, prepare yourself. If she survives, the damage will be permanent. If she doesn't, this becomes more than negligence. It becomes criminal." For the first time, Daniel closed his eyes. Behind them, memories flickered. Liana's laugh in the morning kitchen, her steady hands planting flowers outside their porch, the way she hummed under her breath when she thought no one listened. Those fragments pressed against him, fragile, luminous, unyielding. When he opened his eyes, his voice was steady again. "She will survive. She has to." Delgado placed a hand on his arm, brief but steady. It was both apology and promise. Then she vanished back into the lab, the doors swallowing her whole. The corridor fell into uneasy quiet. Hale attempted composure, straightening her jacket, forcing a thin smile. "When this is over, we'll address the misunderstandings. There will be reviews, but no need for escalations." Daniel almost smiled, not from amusement but from recognition. He had spent years watching people like her fold behind glass tables in boardrooms, mistaking procedure for power. "Escalation has already begun," he said softly. "You just can't hear it yet." The teenager with the phone reappeared at the far end of the corridor, emboldened by the chaos. She angled her device again, streaming quietly from behind a row of chairs. Hale noticed and hissed at Barnes, "Stop her!" But Barnes froze. His hand hovered near the radio, then dropped. He shook his head slowly. "Not this time." His voice was rough, but the refusal was clear. The stream continued. 25,000 viewers now. Daniel did not acknowledge it, though he felt the weight of unseen eyes. The story was leaving this place, carried by strangers who refused silence. From inside the lab came a sudden hush, followed by a single high-pitched alarm. The sound sliced through the corridor, freezing every breath. Hale gasped softly. Mercer pressed both hands over her mouth. Daniel's knuckles whitened around the phone. Then the alarm cut. The silence was worse. Delgado burst through the doors again, her eyes wide. She met Daniel's gaze and shook her head. "We're losing her. They need you." The hallway erupted into motion. Hale stepped back, pale and trembling. Mercer staggered against the wall. Barnes muttered something under his breath, words lost to panic. Daniel moved forward, past them all, his stride unhurried but unstoppable. He pushed through the double doors without hesitation, disappearing into the glare and noise of the lab. The corridor remained behind him, suspended in dread. Hale clutched her clipboard as though it might shield her. Mercer slid down the wall, her breath sharp and uneven. Barnes turned his back to the doors, unable to watch. The teenager's camera kept rolling, the screen filled with frantic comments, hashtags exploding into a storm that none of them could contain. Inside the lab, Daniel stepped into the circle of light where strangers fought to hold his wife against the dark. Machines beeped, wires snaked, hands moved in practiced desperation. Liana lay at the center, her face pale, her chest rising only with the aid of machines. Daniel's presence bent the room. Doctors paused, sensing something they could not name. His silence pressed into them like gravity. He reached for her hand, cold and limp beneath his fingers. He whispered, though the room seemed to hear him. "Come back." The monitor stuttered, a jagged line against the screen. Every breath in the room halted, suspended in that thin, fragile space between loss and return. The room was a storm of white coats and flashing monitors. Wires coiled like serpents across the sterile floor, oxygen hissing in steady bursts. At the center lay Liana Cross, her chest rising only when the ventilator pushed breath into her. Her skin was waxen, drained of its glow. Daniel stood at her side, unmoving, his hand wrapped around hers, anchoring her to the world even as machines threatened to claim her rhythm. The doctors moved around him, a swarm of orders and clipped responses, yet none dared to ask him to step back. His presence was not negotiable. Maria Delgado positioned herself near the head of the table, guiding the lines and murmuring vitals. Her gaze lifted to Daniel briefly, carrying something unspoken. "Keep holding on." The lead cardiologist barked, "Pressure's dropping. We need to move now." Daniel's voice cut through the chaos, steady and quiet. "You waited too long." The doctor froze for a fraction of a second, as though stung, then returned to his work. No one corrected Daniel. No one could. The monitor blared, sharp peaks collapsing into flat valleys. The sound clawed through every ear in the room. Delgado gasped, clutching the oxygen mask tighter. "She's crashing," a nurse called. The cardiologist swore under his breath. "Charge the paddles." The defibrillator whined, a rising sound like a scream muffled by walls. The paddles pressed to her chest. A flash of electricity arched. Her body jolted violently, then stilled. The monitor responded with only a thin, wavering line. A beat of silence stretched, longer than air should allow. Daniel's grip did not loosen. His thumb brushed her cold skin as though coaxing warmth. His eyes never left her face. Again, the charge. Another surge. Her chest convulsed, the smell of singed cloth filling the air. The monitor flickered, teasing rhythm. Then nothing. The team shifted, murmurs rising, panic barely restrained. Delgado's face twisted in desperation. She turned toward the lead, but Daniel spoke first. "She hears me," he said, voice low, vibrating with something deeper than belief. He leaned close, his lips at her ear. "Liana, you don't get to leave. Not yet. Come back." The monitor stuttered. A jagged beat. Then another. Voices erupted. "She's back. We've got a pulse." Relief broke through the tension, though no one dared to claim victory yet. The cardiologist gave clipped instructions, pushing medication, threading the catheter deeper. Delgado's hands worked swiftly, wiping sweat from her brow, but her eyes gleamed with something close to awe. Daniel exhaled once, controlled, though his chest had tightened with the weight of that near loss. He leaned back slightly, but his hand never left hers. The door burst open. Veronica Hale and Helen Mercer appeared, both drawn by the alarms. Hale's veneer of control had cracked. Her face was pale, her voice shaky. "What's happening?" Delgado shot her a look of disdain. What you refused to let us prevent. Now let us work. Mercer's gaze dropped to the monitor. For the first time, her composure fractured. She's stable? Barely, Delgado snapped. And if she doesn't make it through this procedure, it's because of every minute you spent denying care. Hale stiffened, her clipboard clutched like a shield, but Daniel's voice carried over, calm and resonant. Every second is recorded, every word. You can't erase what happened here. The cardiologist spoke, sweat dotting his forehead. We're opening the artery now. Keep her steady. The monitor's peaks steadied, though weaker than before. Delgado's shoulders sagged with relief, but she didn't stop moving. Daniel glanced at Mercer. Her face had lost its hard edges, leaving something raw and terrified. She looked younger suddenly, fragile in her guilt. He said nothing to her. His silence was worse than condemnation. The tension shifted. For the first time, the team worked in unison, urgency aligned with purpose rather than denial. Yet under the hum of machines, a darker undercurrent remained. Liana's survival hung in a balance threadbare from neglect. The phone in Daniel's pocket buzzed. He lifted it, placing it back on speaker. The authoritative voice returned, calm but edged with steel. Mr. Cross, the board has joined. You may proceed. Hale froze, her mouth parting. The board? On this line? The voice cut through her disbelief. Yes, Administrator Hale. We've heard every second, every refusal, every delay. Do you have an explanation? Hale's throat tightened. Words caught, choked. She glanced at Mercer, whose face crumpled further. Neither spoke. Daniel returned his focus to the table. No explanation can mend what's been done, he said, but accountability will. The cardiologist interrupted, his tone urgent but relieved. Blockage cleared, flow restored. She's out of immediate danger. Delgado sagged against the counter, her eyes bright with tears she refused to shed. She whispered, She's going to make it. The monitor now beat steady, fragile but real. Each peak a defiance, each valley a reminder of what had nearly been lost. Daniel pressed his forehead briefly to Liana's hand. I told you, he murmured. You don't get to leave. The room exhaled in collective release, though the weight did not lift. It shifted. The storm was no longer just about survival. It had become judgment. Hale attempted to rally, straightening her jacket. Then this can be resolved internally. There's no need to... The board's voice thundered. No need? A patient nearly died while staff debated paperwork and dismissed clear symptoms. This is negligence of the highest order. There will be consequences. Mercer's knees buckled. She gripped the counter, her voice breaking. Please, I didn't... Daniel turned his eyes on her, cold and unflinching. You didn't see her. You didn't listen. That was the choice that almost killed her. The words lodged in the air, undeniable. Mercer's mouth closed. Hale's face hardened with fear disguised as composure. Barnes lingered in the doorway, his bulk a silent witness, his expression one of quiet dread. The cardiologist ordered, Move her to recovery. Carefully. The gurney rolled toward the exit, wires trailing, machines beeping softly in rhythm with her fragile heart. Daniel followed, his steps slow but unwavering. Behind him, the board's voice lingered in the air. This is only the beginning. The doors swung closed, sealing Daniel and Liana away from Hale and Mercer, leaving them in the cold hum of fluorescent light, suspended in the shadow of judgment yet to come. The recovery ward was hushed, its machines whispering in steady rhythm. The storm of the lab had ebbed into fragile stillness. Liana Cross lay pale against white sheets, her chest rising with the shallow help of oxygen, monitors charting each fragile beat of her survival. Daniel sat beside her, one hand clasped around hers, his shoulders rigid as stone. He did not speak, but his silence spoke louder than any word. His stillness filled the room, pressing against the hum of machines, against the sterile scent of antiseptic. Maria Delgado lingered near the doorway, watching, her eyes lined with fatigue. She had fought for this woman when others hadn't. Now she hesitated, as if deciding whether to break the quiet. At last, she said softly, "She's stable. The artery's open, but her heart has taken damage. She will need time. Months, maybe longer." Daniel nodded once, his gaze fixed on Liana's face. Time she nearly never had. Delgado looked down, her hands tightening around the chart she carried. She whispered, "I should have done more." "You did enough to keep her here," Daniel replied. His voice was calm, but its weight left no space for argument. Delgado swallowed hard, then stepped back, leaving him alone again. Outside the ward, Veronica Hale paced. Her heels tapped a frantic rhythm across the tile, each step betraying nerves she tried to mask. Her phone buzzed with calls she ignored, her clipboard clutched too tightly. Every sound from within the room seemed to pierce her. Dr. Helen Mercer stood a few feet away, her posture slumped, her eyes hollow. The sharpness that once armored her had melted into ash. She whispered more to herself than anyone. "I should have known. I should have listened." Hale snapped, her voice sharp with panic. "Stop talking like that. If you admit fault, you bury us both. Stay silent." Mercer stared at her, eyes wet, voice thin. "Silence already cost too much." The words landed heavy. Even Barnes, standing nearby with his hands folded in front of him, shifted uneasily. The door opened and Daniel stepped out. His presence drew every eye instantly. He looked at Hale, then Mercer, then Barnes. None of them could hold his gaze. "The board is listening," Daniel said. He lifted the phone again, its screen glowing faintly. "Every excuse you make now is not for me. It is for them." Hale straightened, forcing a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Mr. Cross, we regret the misunderstandings tonight. We'll do everything possible to ensure your wife's recovery. I'll personally oversee her care." Daniel's voice was cold steel. "You already oversaw her near death." Mercer flinched. Her hand rose as though to speak, then dropped. Her throat worked, but no words came. The voice on the phone filled the corridor, calm and merciless. "Administrator Hale, Dr. Mercer, this facility will undergo immediate review. Until further notice, your authority is suspended." Hale gasped, clutching her clipboard as though it could anchor her. "Suspended? You can't—" "We can," the voice replied. "And we have." Mercer's back slid against the wall, her legs buckling beneath her. She pressed her palms to her face, whispering into the shadows. Barnes stood frozen, his radio crackling faintly in his hand. Daniel turned to him, his gaze steady. "You carried out their orders. You tried to remove a dying woman from this hospital. That choice belongs to you as much as it belongs to them." Barnes swallowed, his eyes falling to the floor. "I didn't know. I don't understand medical things. You thought obedience was enough," Daniel cut in. "It never is." The silence that followed stretched taut, filled only by the faint hum of fluorescent light. Then the door opened again. Delgado stepped into the corridor, her face pale but determined. "She's asking for you," she said to Daniel. "She's weak, but she's awake." For the first time, Daniel's rigid composure cracked. His shoulders softened, his jaw eased. He moved past the others without a glance, slipping back into the room where his wife waited. Liana's eyes fluttered open as he sat beside her. They were glazed, heavy with medication, but they found him. Her lips trembled around the oxygen mask. "Still here," she whispered, barely audible. Daniel leaned close, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "Always." Her hand twitched against his, frail but insistent. He squeezed gently, grounding her against the tide. Her voice was faint, broken by shallow breaths. "They didn't see me." His reply was a whisper against the sterile air. "They see you now." Outside, Hale muttered into her phone, frantic, her voice breaking into fragments. Mercer sat crumpled against the wall, her eyes fixed on the floor, her mind unraveling. Barnes leaned back, silent, shame carved deep into his face. Inside the ward, Daniel bent closer to Liana. Her eyes closed again, but her hand remained in his, tethered. The monitor beside her pulsed steady, fragile but insistent. The phone in Daniel's pocket buzzed once more. He set it on the table, its speaker filling the quiet with the board's voice. "Mr. Cross, we are sending representatives to the hospital within the hour. Security has been notified. Changes will begin tonight." Daniel looked at Liana, then at the phone. His voice was steady, deliberate. "Then let them start here." The monitor beeped in fragile rhythm, the sound thin but alive. From the hallway came the faint echo of footsteps, more staff arriving, more eyes turning toward the storm building in this single ward. The night was not done. The reckoning had only just begun. The hospital ward had transformed into a stage. What began as a single woman gasping for breath in a waiting room had spilled into something larger, something that pulled at the walls and pressed against every corner of the building. Everyone could feel it, the sense that the air itself was holding judgment. Liana Cross drifted in and out of consciousness, her frail body tethered by wires and machines. The faint rhythm of the monitor pulsed like a fragile metronome, each beat proof of survival but also evidence of delay. Her breathing was shallow, but her hand still clutched Daniel's with surprising strength, as if to remind him she was still here. Daniel sat beside her, posture steady, though the storm inside him was not. His phone rested on the side table, its screen glowing faintly. The board remained connected, silent now, listening. The weight of unseen ears pressed into the ward, invisible witnesses to everything unfolding. The door opened quietly. Maria Delgado stepped in, her expression cautious. She held a folder close to her chest. "Mr. Cross," she said softly, "I've pulled records. I thought you should see." Daniel accepted the folder without a word. He opened it slowly, his eyes scanning the pages. Delgado's voice carried into the silence. "These are logs from the last 18 months. Complaints, patient charts, wait times, patterns, all dismissed, filed away. But the numbers don't lie." The papers revealed it clearly. Minority patients waiting longer, treatment delayed, outcomes worsened. Line after line, page after page, the evidence was undeniable. Daniel closed the folder with deliberate calm. "How long have you known?" Delgado's shoulders sagged. "I suspected. I saw it happen. I spoke up once, but it went nowhere. After that, I stayed quiet." Her eyes lowered, shame coloring her words. "I thought silence was safer." Daniel's reply was not cruel, but it was heavy. "Silence is what almost buried her tonight." Delgado flinched. She nodded once, accepting the truth. The door opened again, sharper this time. Veronica Hale strode in, her expression tight, her smile forced. Helen Mercer followed behind her, pale and hollow, her eyes sunken. Owen Barnes lingered in the hall, unwilling to step inside but unable to walk away. "Mr. Cross," Hale began, her voice polished though strained, "we understand your frustrations, but these matters are complicated. Statistics can be misleading. There are explanations." Daniel cut her off with a glance that silenced the rest. He gestured toward the folder. "These numbers aren't statistics. They're people. Every delay is a name. Every chart is a life." and one nearly ended tonight. Mercer swallowed hard, her voice cracking. I never meant to. Daniel's eyes locked on hers. Intention doesn't mend damage. Action does. Or the lack of it. The monitor beside Liana beeped steadily, fragile proof of the cost. The phone on the table buzzed. The board's voice filled the room, calm but severe. Administrator Hale, Dr. Mercer, you will remain present. Mr. Cross, proceed. Hale's mask of control faltered. Proceed? With what? Daniel's tone was precise, each word deliberate. With truth. They need to hear it. He opened the folder again, flipping through the records. His voice stayed calm, but every syllable carried weight. Patient after patient, presenting with identical symptoms, some treated within minutes, others left waiting. The difference is not medical, it is perception. It is prejudice. Delgado stepped closer, her voice firmer now. He's right. I saw it. Time and again. We had resources. We had capacity. The choices were made by people in this room. Mercer's face crumpled. Tears welled at the corners of her eyes, but she held them back, her hands trembling. Hale pressed her lips into a thin line, her silence damning. Daniel closed the folder again and placed it on the table. His gaze returned to Liana, her fragile breaths steady but weak. She almost became another line in those records, another number. The board's voice broke the silence. This is a systemic failure. What began as negligence tonight is evidence of something larger. This will not be buried. The words shifted the air, filling the room with a new kind of gravity. Mercer's sob finally broke free, muffled by her hands. Hale stiffened, her face pale, her eyes darting as though searching for escape. Daniel did not move. His hand remained around Liana's, his silence anchoring the storm. Barnes appeared in the doorway, hesitant. His voice was low, almost apologetic. I didn't understand what was happening, but I saw enough tonight to know it wasn't right. Daniel turned his head slowly, his eyes steady. You saw, and you obeyed anyway. Barnes bowed his head, the truth crushing. He stepped back, fading into the shadows of the hall. The pivot came not with shouting, but with stillness. Liana stirred, her eyes flickering open. Her lips moved beneath the mask, a whisper carried only to Daniel. Don't let them forget. He leaned close, brushing her forehead with his lips. They won't. The phone on the table buzzed again. The board's voice sharpened, colder than before. Mr. Cross, representatives are arriving now. Security will escort them directly to you. This hospital will change before morning. Hale's breath caught. Before morning? Yes, the voice replied. Effective immediately. The room froze. Hale's clipboard slipped from her hands, scattering papers across the tile. Mercer sank into the nearest chair, her hands shaking. Delgado stood straighter, her eyes burning with quiet vindication. Daniel remained still, his hand steady around Liana's. His silence filled the room, heavier than any declaration. From the corridor came the echo of approaching footsteps, firm, measured, more than one set. Each step carried the weight of authority. Hale's eyes darted toward the door. Mercer closed her eyes. Delgado exhaled slowly. Daniel did not move. The footsteps drew closer, louder, then stopped outside the ward. The door handle turned. The room held its breath. The door opened with a whisper of hinges, though the weight it carried shook the ward. 3 figures entered, their suits immaculate, their expressions carved from stone. Behind them trailed hospital security who, for once, did not command, but obeyed. The air tightened, and every eye in the room turned toward Daniel Cross. He did not rise from Liana's bedside. His hand remained around hers, anchoring her to the world, but his stillness commanded more authority than any procession of officials. The board's representatives stopped just inside the ward, their gazes sweeping over Veronica Hale, Helen Mercer, Maria Delgado, and finally Daniel. The lead among them, a man with silver hair and a voice like tempered glass, spoke first. "We have reviewed the reports. We have seen the stream. We have listened to this line. What happened here tonight will never be buried." Hale stepped forward, her voice trembling, her practiced veneer collapsing. "This was a misunderstanding, a lapse in judgment. We can correct it internally." The silver-haired man cut her off. "A misunderstanding does not trend across half the country. A lapse in judgment does not nearly kill a patient while equipment waits unused. This was discrimination. This was negligence. And it was recorded." Hale's lips parted, but no words came. Her clipboard lay forgotten on the floor, papers scattered like broken glass. Mercer raised her head slowly. Her eyes were red, her face drawn. She whispered, almost pleading, "I didn't see her. I thought—" The man's gaze sliced through her words. "You thought her life less urgent. That thought cost her heart. It could have cost her life." The silence that followed was suffocating. Machines beeped faintly beside Liana, fragile proof of survival. Delgado's gaze darted between Daniel and the officials, her face tight with expectation. Barnes lingered in the doorway, his shoulders hunched, his shame carved into every line of his stance. Daniel finally spoke. His voice was soft, but it carried. They measured her worth against paperwork, against assumptions. They left her waiting while her heart starved. Every second is written in her blood. The silver-haired man nodded once, solemn. "It will not be forgotten." The other two officials stepped forward. One addressed Hale. "Effective immediately, you are relieved of your administrative position. Your access is revoked. You will surrender your credentials tonight." Hale staggered, her hand clutching the air for something solid. Nothing met her grasp. The other turned to Mercer. "Your license will be placed under emergency suspension pending investigation. You are barred from practicing medicine at this facility or any affiliate. Effective now." Mercer's body folded into the chair, her face crumpling. She pressed both hands to her mouth, her shoulders shaking. No defense came. Barnes stepped forward hesitantly, his voice rough. "And me?" The silver-haired man studied him. "You carried out orders that would have forced a dying woman into the street. You are dismissed from service. Consider yourself fortunate the law does not weigh heavier on you tonight." Barnes lowered his head, accepting the sentence without protest. He turned, disappearing into the corridor without another word. Delgado stood straighter, her chest rising with something close to relief, but edged with grief. She had witnessed, she had spoken, and now the tide turned. But the victory tasted bitter, steeped in what could never be undone. Daniel looked at her, his eyes softening for the first time. "You kept her here," he said. "That mattered." Delgado nodded, her throat too tight to speak. The officials shifted their attention back to Daniel. "Mr. Cross, the board is prepared to implement reforms immediately. Systems will change. Protocols will be rewritten. What began tonight will ripple far beyond this ward." Daniel glanced down at Liana. Her eyes were closed, but her hand still gripped his with fragile determination. He brushed his thumb across her knuckles, his voice steady. "Then let the change begin with her name. Let every patient who walks through these doors be seen, not dismissed." The silver-haired man inclined his head. "It will be done." The officials turned, their footsteps echoing as they left the ward. The door shut behind them, leaving only the hum of machines, the faint rustle of sheets, and the fragile rhythm of a heart that refused to quit. Hale remained frozen, her face drained of color. Slowly, she gathered her fallen papers, her movements mechanical. She cast one last glance at Daniel, but his gaze never met hers. She left the ward without a word. Mercer did not move. She sat in silence, her tears spilling unchecked. At last she rose, her shoulders bent, and followed Hale out into the corridor, her steps hollow. Delgado lingered a moment longer. She touched Daniel's shoulder lightly. "She'll need time, but she has it, thanks to you." Daniel's eyes never left Liana. "Thanks to truth." Delgado nodded and slipped out, leaving the couple alone. The ward grew quiet. The machines pulsed, steady now. Liana stirred faintly, her eyes fluttering open. She found him there, as she always had. "You stayed," she whispered, her voice raw. "I always will." Her lips curved, weak but real. "They'll change now?" Daniel leaned closer, his forehead resting against hers. "They have no choice." The silence that followed was tender, but beneath it flowed something larger, unstoppable. The world beyond the ward was already shifting. The stream had reached millions. The records were in motion. Policies would be rewritten. Entire systems would be forced to see what had been ignored. But for Daniel, for Liana, the truth was smaller and heavier. Every beat of her heart was a reminder of the cost. Every rise of her chest was a victory pulled from silence. He held her hand tighter, anchoring her to the moment. The storm outside the ward would rage for months, for years. But here, now, survival was enough. The lights buzzed overhead. The monitor pulsed. The world waited at the edge of transformation. Daniel whispered once more, almost to himself, "Never invisible again." The night did not answer, but the steady rhythm of Liana's heart filled the room with its fragile defiance, promising that the reckoning had only just begun.